Like I say, we're going to be reviewing the book, The Total Money Makeover by Dave Ramsey, a proven plan for financial fitness. And I think that subtitle really describes what this book is all about, is sort of taking control of your money and, getting rid of the awful lifestyle of living paycheck to paycheck and having to figure out how to do the bills, because that's stressful, right? No one wants to have to worry about being able to feed themselves, pay rent. That should be stuff that's already covered in a monthly budget or whatever it may be. So we're going to talk about this. This is a book about getting your finances together when you don't have it together, and how you might go about doing that and getting the right mindset as somebody who needs to save money, and why, and how. And so that's what we're going to be talking about when we review the Total Money Makeover. If you guys are interested in the book by the end of this review, feel free to check out the link in the description below. Help me out with a little bit of affiliate money. Appreciate it. So I want to start off by saying that I'm probably not the average Total Money Makeover story. I learned from my mistakes when it came to credit cards when I was about 20. I'm 30 now. I learned from my mistakes with debt around the same time. And I fully understand the stress that debt and living paycheck to paycheck put on you. And it's one of the reasons I dropped out of college and started working. And, I have no debt. Up until recently, I had no credit cards. I don't even use my credit card. I just have one to build credit. But even that, I might be closing soon. I have 6 months of 6 months plus of rent or expenses. So in that avenue, I'm fairly advanced on what they call the baby steps of this book. The Total Money Makeover is about starting from, if you have $100,000 of debt, how are we going to start tackling that? If you're living paycheck to paycheck, how are we going to start tackling that? And they refer to them as the baby steps. About getting that emergency fund of $1,000 and creating the debt snowball, which are essentially easy wins. Paying off, making the minimum monthly payments on all your debts, and then paying off the smallest debt in that order first, so that we can see the momentum build that snowball. And that's very, very helpful. There's a lot of very eye-opening stats in this book, such as when it comes to home ownership. I really appreciated the section about paying off your home and buying your home, and just really sitting down and seeing the difference between a 30-year mortgage and a 15-year mortgage, and what that means and the amount of interest you're paying, and the budget sheets. In here, there's a link to a bunch of different budget sheets and calculations you can do as you're on your Total Money Makeover that you can say, help facilitate that. And they're in the book, as well as you can download them from his website. Now, I will say that for some of you who are a little bit more sticklers of you're either anti-politics, anti-religion. I'm not a very religious person, but when people talk about that stuff, it doesn't bother me. There's about 20 Bible verses in here. Usually they're pretty relevant, to be honest with you. Like the one that always comes to mind is when talking about debt. He quotes the Bible. I believe it's the Bible. I think he said the Bible. That's how religious I am. So, and he says, the borrower is slave to the lender. And there's some truth to that when you just sort of think about it logically. Is like, if you owe somebody money, you will have some sort of commitment to them. And it is a stressful one at that. So I appreciated, I didn't necessarily appreciate the Bible verses, but I did appreciate this book very much so. Another thing that I really liked about this book is there's about maybe 30, 40 personal stories about a page long where you have these couples who have written, the author of this book, Dave Ramsey, who's been to give you a background on Dave Ramsey if you're not familiar, he has gone broke twice himself, taking out debt and then having people call to collect and not being able to pay. And he's originally in real estate. He's been doing a syndicated talk show on financial investments and sort of getting your life together in that avenue for about 25 years or so. And he's the author of this book and many other books. I'll probably pick up another one pretty soon. I thought this was a great introduction book to just sort of remind myself what's important. So there's a lot of, and that's one thing I also want to say is that as I mentioned, I'm probably not the typical person for this, but I still found value in it. My expectations, by the way, for those of you who saw the last book review, I still have this wonderful bookmark April made me. Just some history on this. This came from a separator in a cat food box. It's 2018 edition. I'll have to upgrade in 2019. We're not using any bootleg ass outdated bookmarks. But I will say that for this book, there's those stories in there are really relatable. You'll find one story in there, and I think that's important because a lot of people just want to think they're the exception, man. No one understands. No one's living my life. In reality, most people have similar situations to us all. And I think those stories in there really help to paint that picture as you're trying to get your finances together and you're trying to just live a better financial life or a more fit financial fitness or a fit financial life. I also appreciated there's this one section where they talk about college and part of your total money makeover is planning for the future, right? Saving for retirement, and another section of it is planning for your kids' college tuition and how you can go about that and putting you in that mindset. So there's a section on college here about it's brief, but not only about saving, but about what you should go to college for. And I found that very enlightening because not enlightening, but refreshing, because so many times like college is a must. You're gonna be a crackhead on the street if you don't go to college. And in the section he's like, well, if you're going to college for a job that pays $25,000 and you took out $80,000 in debt, then you really are a slave to the lender, because you're never paying that back, right? That's indentured servitude. And so I found it refreshing to just have an honest talk about college and what it means when you sort of do something so silly as that. And that's not to say that you can't go and be passionate about things, but like there are numbers to all of this where in some instances it just doesn't make sense. So I found that really refreshing, and I really enjoyed this book. I read it in about a week and a half. It's rather simplistic, but I think at the end of the day, most people don't have financial common sense. I've learned from my mistakes somewhat. I'm not perfect, I've learned about debt, I would say, at the very least, and what that caused for me. But I found a lot of good reminders in here, as well as some items to keep on the back burner to say, okay, when I'm buying a house, these are the things that I need to learn. These are the things that I want to go about. This is how I'm going to implement, and just sort of keep me on the straight and narrow path. And I think it's really good for that. And I think this book is probably very detailed for 90% of the population, because most people, and their stats backing this up, are living paycheck to paycheck, which is someone who's done that. I've talked about it before. I've slept on couches. I've slept on floors. I've been living paycheck to paycheck pretty much all my life, except for the last few years when I entered the workforce as a developer. And it is an awful thing. It's a stressful thing. I couldn't even imagine doing it with children and other people who are dependent upon me. I remember having to choose between food for me and my cats. And, the cats got the food every time because, they're just, to me, it's like, oh my goodness, I gotta make sure my cat baby can eat. And so, so when I say that I've learned from these mistakes, I'd like to think I have. I would say that for most people are still trying to figure it out in life, and they haven't sort of had that common sense wake up. And there's a lot of common sense in here, but as common sense goes, it's not so common anymore. So I would recommend the Total Money Makeover. I think it's a great entry-level financial book, and that for those of you who have never read a financial book before, I've only read 2 or 3. I would highly recommend this, especially if you already think you have control of your life and you just want to sort of make sure that you're on the right path and on the straight and narrow. I think this is a good book, and I'd check it out. Again, there's a link in the description if you want to help me out with a little bit of affiliate money. I appreciate you guys watching the video. Don't forget to comment, like, subscribe, share. Hit that notification bell so you can know next time I throw a video out. And let me say one more thing. Actually, one of the reasons that I read this book was not to only be on the straight and narrow, but I also think it's important that as developers, a lot of us are coming from college where we work no money, or we have a minimum wage job or like a job with tips. Like for me, I would have been a delivery driver going this, and you're gonna be making 3 to 7 times what your minimum wage is easily when you graduate or when you enter the workforce as a developer. And sometimes when you get those massive influxes of money, if you're used to making $8 an hour and now you're making $40 an hour, sometimes you don't know what to do, and that's okay because you've never been in that situation. And I think that's a common thing for a lot of software developers, but especially early on, before you have kids and before you have a mortgage, and maybe you're even living at home to save some money, it's really important to know how to manage your money responsibly so that you can, have your money work for you instead of paying interest, right? It's better to make interest than to pay interest. So I think this is a really good book for a lot of people who are just entering the workforce or want to be prepared when they do. So that's my last thing. Hit that notification bell. See you guys later. All right, so GeoMaverick124 says, what would you say makes a good dev? Now, it depends on what stage you are in your career, but some general attributes of a good dev is somebody who is constantly learning at work and outside of work and continuing to grow, right? So I've mentioned different times, there's different levels to this game, and you need to continue to be leveling up, right? Just because you got a job doesn't mean that it's the best job, and just because it's a good job doesn't mean that you can't do better and want to do better. And so you need to be able to have that hunger, that drive to continue pushing forward. You also need to be good at problem solving. And so, wherever your weaknesses are, you need to fill those gaps are. And wherever those strengths are of you in development, you want to expand. I think that involves a lot of experimentation as a dev and trying to keep it fun, keep it satisfying, and be willing to try new things, right? Learning the latest and the greatest is one of the best ways that you can stay on top of the game, in your niche in software. So really just trying to work on those problem solving skills, those technical problems will always help you out in your interview process, career run, and getting you to think like a developer. But more than anything else, I think it's just about staying hungry and continuing learning. I want to thank our sponsor, TemplateMonster.com. Not only can you buy templates, PowerPoints, resumes, anything that you can think of, portfolio sites, you can also sell yours on their platform and earn a nice side income. There's a link in the description below to check them out at TemplateMonster.com.